Muy buenos días, ¿cómo están ustedes? Sean todas y todos muy bienvenidos a esta nueva edición de la e-misión 2021. Estoy muy feliz de reencontrarme con todos ustedes después de cerca de 3 meses y medio. En julio tuvimos grandes expositores, presentaciones y por supuesto quedaron en evidencia también grandes desafíos para toda la industria. Y sin duda estoy convencida que esta versión no va a ser la excepción respecto a eso. Como bien recuerdan, nuestras misiones se realizaban de forma presencial, nos trasladábamos a diversas partes del mundo, viajábamos y eso nos permitía conocer las principales tendencias y experiencias internacionales en materia de innovación y con eso también podíamos intentar replicarlas en nuestro país. Sin embargo, a pesar de los avances que hemos tenido en materia sanitaria, hemos decidido aprovechar las ventajas que nos está entregando la tecnología y llevar a cabo esta versión de manera online nuevamente. Al igual que las versiones anteriores, cada encuentro tiene una temática principal y en esta versión quisimos abordar un tema sumamente relevante y actual tanto en nuestro gremio como en las diversas industrias en general, como lo es la sostenibilidad. Esta temática ha tomado gran relevancia para nuestro sector y poco a poco se ha convertido en una bandera de lucha en los diversos proyectos que se han implementado y se incentivan también, como lo es el compromiso PRO, que todos ustedes conocen ya. Pero antes de contarles un poco más, quisiera presentar a las personas que hoy me acompañan. Ustedes ya nos están viendo en sus pantallas. Se encuentra Roberto Morrison, miembro del Consejo
Here we have Roberto Morrison of the Sustainability area of the CChC.
Muy bienvenidos, gracias por acompañarnos hoy en esta emisión. ¿Cómo están ustedes?
Muy bien, muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias por la invitación.
Bueno, nos queda
Okay, thanks for your invite.
Estoy segura que vamos a aprovechar tanto con ustedes, con los invitados que tenemos aquí en nuestro estudio, como quienes se están conectando en el día de hoy. Les cuento que estos grandes invitados nos van a estar acompañando y tienen especial foco esta sesión de hoy en la certificación y la exposición de casos de éxito a nivel mundial en materia de sostenibilidad. Y para esto vamos a contar con grandes expositores. Tenemos la alegría de contarles que para esta emisión la Embajada de Reino Unido ha cooperado activamente con la organización y contacto de grandes expositores británicos para que nos expongan sobre las diversas temáticas que vamos a estar viendo a lo largo de estas cerca de 2 semanas. Por lo mismo, los invitamos a participar activamente para que juntos podamos aprovechar esta gran actividad. En las actividades que hemos tenido anteriormente, ustedes han estado
We'll be participating very actively, and for this, we will leverage this as much as possible. But before continuing with the program, let me tell you of the participations we have. I want to leave you with the Ambassador of the United Kingdom, who will connect with us in a few moments, but now we're going to be telling you how the platform works, with which we're going to be working during these days, and before. It's a very simple platform to use, and how does this application work? It's really simple. I advise you to have this device, maybe a tablet or a phone, to connect through this transmission, and so you have to go into www.menti.com and you must enter the code that appears in the screen. Right now, we will have the bar and at the bottom of your screen and receive the instructions of the platform. So you will see all the doubts you have, and we will be answering in this conversation space. If you have any questions that interest you more than others, you can also press an icon to support it, and we will know what are the questions that are more important for you to be able to keep them into account in the discussion. I will also remind you that our speakers are going to be speaking in English, but we have simultaneous translation. You only need to activate it at the bottom right in the Zoom. In the bottom right, beside the convert screen, you can choose this option. With all this, we could connect ourselves with the ambassador who might be connecting with us right now. We don't have our ambassador still with us. But the first speaker we will have today is Rick Sawyer, who's member of the Considerate construction team, which is a nonprofit founded in 1987 with the purpose of raising the standards of the construction market by best practices code will apply to the labor force, the environment, and the best businesses. So we have a virtual applause for Philip Sawyer.
That's great. Good morning, everybody. Is my screen being shared?
Not yet.
Okay. Hopefully you can see it now.
Now we can see your presentation.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. My name is Philip Sawyer. I'm the head of Assurance and Challenge of the Considerate Constructor Scheme. And today, I would like to talk to you about the Considerate Constructor Scheme, why it was developed, what we're doing today, where we're going in the future, some of the challenges for the industry and how we're addressing those challenges, and also how we engage companies within the industry to work with us and develop their practices with concern or respect consideration in their operations. So the scheme was developed in 1996, and it came out of a report that the government had commissioned to look into how well the construction industry was serving both government, so public contracts, and also private contracts. And that report, undertaken by Sir Latham, identified that there was an issue amongst many other recommendations with the image of the industry. And hence, the Code of Considerate Practice was developed with a scoring scheme and a monitoring process in 1996 and piloted. And in 1997, the scheme was launched to the public nationally, or to the instructors nationally, with 178 sites being registered. And the first awards were made in 1998 for organisations that were demonstrated to conform with the Code of Considerate Practice. The scheme continued to be run by industry until 2003, when the Considerate Structures Scheme CCS Limited was implemented to take the scheme forward with an independent board and as a not-for-profit organisation. So that means that our costs to the industry are based on, and fees that we charge are based on the costs of the organisation. We don't make any profit. Today, we have over 124,000 sites been registered, not annually, that's in total, and we've completed over 200,000 monitoring visits. So we've got a lot of experience over the past 20 years in delivering of the Considerate construction practice. Today, annually, about 7,500 activities are registered with us. We have a broad range of schemes to attract different sectors in the industry. So an ultra-site scheme for the really large contracts, such as the HS2 rail link going from London and north. We have a partner scheme to help organisations engage with us, and they also help us develop our standards. And they commit to registering all of their sites with the Considerate Constructors Scheme. And currently there's 65 industry partners, and they range from very large constructors to some smaller ones. We also run a supplier scheme, so that's for organisations supplying construction sites. They might be brick manufacturers, scaffolders, waste contractors, etc. And 77 clients who also register with us and require all of their constructors to register with us for their activities. And we have a best practice hub, which provides both e-learning and shares best practices and innovations across the scheme that are reported to us. The organisation is set up in 3 different functions or departments. There's the Assurance and Positive Challenge, which develops the standards and the monitoring activities that's run by me. We have a collaborative and leadership organisation who supports the industry-wide collaboration in terms of learning, sharing of best practices and influencing. And we also have a public engagement and communication team who deal with both complaints from the public, but more widely understanding public needs and creating a collaborative approach between the industry and the public. This year, we implemented a digital reporting process. It's a really large innovation for us and came probably a little bit too late, but it's a really important innovation to help the industry learn and improve from our monitoring activity. So the reports we provide are scored, and as part of that scoring, they receive information about the best practices that have been identified by our monitors, and also about the improvement opportunities that the site has against our code of considerate practice. More importantly, the digital data can be submitted and is submitted to a digital dashboard, which you see on the right-hand side of your screen, which provides a lot more detailed information about the performance of the organisation, but also, well, sites of the organisation, but more generally can be used by the industry when the data is anonymised to understand where there are improvement opportunities wide across the industry. And that helps us both build our standards, but also build learning and other tools to share with the industry to help them improve in areas of weakness. So this is really important for us in the future, and it's important for our clients as well to be able to understand all of that data in a digital format. In 2020, we undertook a full strategic review of what CCS does and provides to the industry. And that was in the light of the Grenfell Tower disaster, and partly driven by the review that Dame Judith Hackett did into the reasons for the tower fire in London in 2017. And what we established as part of that review is that we needed to move very much more central between the public and the industry to ensure that we could help the industry demonstrate the good practices that it does and the benefits that it brings to the public and society as a whole, but also ensure that the public's needs, feelings, aspirations were reflected on by the industry, and we raised the standards within the industry. So that was published last year. You can see a little document up on the right-hand side there. We can provide that as well if you're interested through the mission. But really our sense out of that strategic review was to create positive impact across the industry for both the workforce, communities, the environment, by caring for people and safety, caring for the environment and the communities in which we work, monitoring, improving industrial practice, and engaging much more with the public to understand their needs and their views. So our aim broadly is to raise standards in the construction industry and build trust. And it's important that we do that because most construction is undertaken in areas of sensitivity, and that may be environmental sensitivity, but more importantly, generally in areas where people live, so there's high urban occupation. And that's important that we create a positive impression of the industry and a positive legacy from the construction activities, because they're the places that we work, we play, and we rest. The Code of Considerate Construction, or Practice, commits registered activities, so that's companies, suppliers, and others who register with us to ensure that they respect the communities, protect the environment, and care about and value their workforce. Who does this? This is done by companies that register with us. We call them registered activities, but as I said earlier on, through the different schemes, they may be suppliers, they may be building sites, they may be companies that operate construction companies, and other people that engage with the construction industry. So a broad range of people that are engaged and that we influence through the scheme. And the way in which our three departments work is that our collaboration and leadership team engage with policymakers, that may be government, local authority, trade associations, and other industry bodies, and those that work in the industry, to both understand the needs, but also to influence and facilitate knowledge sharing across the industry. And it's really important that we do that and we build that trust, both within the industry, but also with the public. My department, which deals with the assurance and challenge across the industry, is responsible for developing standards and providing independent monitoring. And the aim of that is to encourage continual improvement and cultural change throughout the construction process, creating impact and positive legacies and journeys for those that are impacted by construction. And finally, the communication engagement team listen to the public. They engage with aligned schemes and other industry bodies and the government as well, to ensure that our work contributes in the greatest possible way to positive impact. So we really listen to the public and the public voice to make sure that the industry addresses the concerns of the public. The industry is facing many challenges currently around sustainability, and sustainability isn't just the environment, it's about the people in the industry. So we are struggling at the moment to both attract and retain skilled labour within the industry, but also in terms of creating positive legacies and a positive impact for people impacted by construction, and listening to the public to ensure that we understand the experiences they get. Our response at CCS is to develop a much broader code than the one we currently have. And this is a layered and flexible approach, allowing more organisations to engage positively and proactively with the Code of Considerate Construction and demonstrate not just that they're compliant with our scheme, but the broader good that they do for society and deliver a positive impact through demonstrating improved leadership and culture within their organisations and demonstrating how they've achieved against set objectives. So the new scheme is set up into 3 different modules. The first module is the core code, which is not considerably different from our current code, but it has focused much more on the current challenges around the environment, biodiversity, community engagement and public voice, and also workforce, and in particular mental health issues and physical health issues within the workforce, and more generally their safety. That's a mandatory code. It's required for everybody that registers us to comply with that code, but it's the basic level. And if you want to, or if an organisation wants to demonstrate more and be more involved, it can do that through our options. So we have 2 options. Organisation can undertake both options or one option, or they can do one and then another. The first one we've developed is a leadership and culture model. And the leadership and culture model uses non-financial statements aligned with current industry challenges, so around mental and physical well-being, communities and the environment, to understand the perceptions and practices within an organisation, not what's said by its leaders, but what people within the organisation feel. And by understanding the gap between what organisations strive to achieve and what people think that they're doing and actually do, the organisation can set continual improvement opportunities and move its organisation closer to meeting those needs and deliver positive impact and value. And finally, this module we haven't developed yet, we're working on that, and that'll be implemented through next year, is a module that allows an organisation to define its objectives for positive impact or social value. And it will do that around, again, the key issues facing the industry: the environment, net zero, net gain, community engagement, and well-being of its workforce. And we will be able then to track and demonstrate and verify for organisations that opt for those modules the social value and the positive impact they bring as a result of their activities. Engaging with companies through a voluntary scheme is not easy, and it requires us to be very deeply engaged, listening as an organisation to both the needs of those organisations, but the needs of the public and the challenges more broadly the industry faces. Those challenges are diverse, and they are probably greater today than they have been in the past. We have significant regulations for net zero for organisations to achieve with regards to the environment. We have supply chain challenges. We have workforce supply challenges and other building safety regulations that are coming along for the industry in the light of the Grenfell fire disaster in 2017. The construction industry is also fragmented. It's a very large industry populated by a huge number of very small organisations subcontracting and contracting to much larger developers. Also, we have over 100 monitors for our scheme, monitoring those 7,500 sites, and we need to ensure that there's consistency across all of those monitors so that the industry can truly learn and understand how it's performing. And we also need or struggle to recruit sufficient monitors as well to deliver that work. So the important things to do in ensuring the scheme is appropriate to organisations is understand and manage our stakeholders and deliver a code that is relevant to the stakeholders' needs through not just directly, but also through engagement through our partners as well, and particularly where you've got advocates such as clients that can ask their contractors to comply with our scheme. That means that the scheme has to have value as well, otherwise people won't want to use it. Our standards need to be relevant to the current challenges and help the industry to address those challenges through learning and sharing of best practice. And it needs to be flexible enough so that different organisations in terms of style, turnover of the business, etc., can partake effectively and with benefit with our scheme. We also need to ensure the competency of monitors is maintained. So we need to establish and have established effective induction programs, performance measuring activities, and also mentoring. And we do that on a regular basis with our monitors to ensure there is consistency. We also measure data from our monitors and the standard deviations between monitor scores to ensure that there is compatibility between the different reports that we get. And we do engage with professional bodies as well to find monitors who are knowledgeable about the construction industry, but can work from a sort of an informed member of the public perspective, because it's not an audit we undertake, it's a monitoring activity which is intended to encourage people to improve the practices that they operate to. And then finally, the scheme values and benefits that we bring. There are many, but these are for me the key ones. So the first thing is that we must have a scheme that is robust and adds value and has a solid reputation in the industry. Otherwise, people won't register with it and it won't bring value to them. The value they do get from our scheme is that it is robust and recognised, and it provides a market differentiator for them with many of the clients that require constructors to register with us. We have a best practice hub, which also provides e-learning. That for me is one of the real benefits that our registered activities get from us, in addition to the monitoring. It's free to all of our members and actually to the general public. You can go in and look at the best practices there. You just have to register with it. We continue to raise our standards to ensure that they do help organisations to meet today's challenges. And we have strong benchmarking tools across the industry to demonstrate where people can learn. But we also need to recognise and reward people for good performance. So we do have an awards programme that's run annually, and it recognises both individual good practice, but also companies' good practice. And finally, a public engagement offering that not only goes out and understands the needs of the public, but also listens to public concerns and acts as a liaison between communities and construction activities to solve problems. Things like people working at night and disturbing and disrupting sleep. People can phone up and make a complaint, and we will contact the site and try and resolve that issue, as an example. And you can see on there, I think this year to date, we've had 5,700 complaints from the public about construction activities. So quite a significant body of work. That concludes my presentation for today, and I'll be happy to take questions. I think we're taking questions straight afterwards.
from our viewers and also from the people that are here today with me. Martin, you had some questions for Philip?
Yes, thank you, Philip, for the presentation. It was very good. And one of the questions I was thinking during the presentation is at the level of the project, for instance, the workforce, and how they feel about the company where they work and has this registration, and they feel like motivated, or they feel like they have an extra work to do. And so the question finally is how they feel to work in a company that has this part of this CCS program.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And with all workers, it depends on who you are and where you work. So there will undoubtedly be site managers who are under a lot of pressure to do many different things, deliver a project on time, within budget, and will have supply problems, labor problems, etc. And at times, I suspect that they will find engagement with monitors and the Considerate Constructor scheme as a challenge. However, they also recognize the value that it brings, and the whole industry recognizes how the Considerate Constructors scheme has, over the past 20 years, made a real difference to the image of the industry and those people working in it, and also the public that are affected by the industry. We don't measure that in a formal way currently. It's measured through feedback and information we get both from our monitors but also from the public. So I don't have any data to say, here's a 20% change or a 50% change in people's perceptions and understanding, but we do get a lot of very valuable feedback. And the fact that our registrations have continued to grow and organizations continue to register with us means that it is adding value to both the construction companies, but also the people that work in those organizations and the people that are impacted by construction more generally.
Thank you for that, Philip. Roberto also has a question for you here.
Good afternoon, Philip, for you. Good morning for me here. A question you've just answered is related to the workforce, but I'd like to have your vision on how the public has received this form of working, this form of relating to them, and of course, how have the employers, I mean the clients, and finally the companies related to this scheme. Obviously, the company has to have a feedback that is positive. How do you get around to getting this positive feedback so that the companies are sure that they're going in the right direction?
Yeah, good morning, Roberto. I hope you have a nice spring morning out. We've got a bit of an autumnal day here. So I think your point's a very good question and very well made. People will only engage in a scheme that adds value to an extent. We do have some people who engage with us because they have to, because that's what the client wants. But the majority of our registrations register with us because they want to and because they perceive value from it. So I mentioned early on in my presentation that we currently have 65 partners. They're companies who commit to working with us, to registering all of their sites with us. And that's they register about 65% of our total registrations. So that 65% of the 7,500 registrations annually comes from that partner group. And they do that because it adds value, and it adds value in a number of ways. That is the monitoring activity, although it's challenging for people, it also brings value because it allows them to have conversations with industry knowledgeable experts about the challenges they face in in a non-adversarial environment. So it's, if you go to your boss or somebody else in the business because you've got a problem, that might cause a sort of be an adversarial sort of engagement. Whereas if you go and talk to a monitor with a problem, you'll get help and advice because they're independent and that's what they're there to do. So the value is brought by those types of things, and also by recognizing the good practice. So the good practice hub and the innovation processes help organizations recognize the work they do, as do the digital reports that we provide now and the dashboards, and also the award ceremonies where we reward people for the good practice that they do, both companies and individuals. So a lot of things that people can engage with and get value out of it and obtain a positive experience. We're not focused on reporting all the things that are bad. Our reports are balanced, so they demonstrate both the good practice and the bad or the improvement opportunities that an organization has in a very balanced way. And the public, we do measure public engagement. I think, like most things with the public, unless they've got something to complain about, they don't tend to value what we give. But when they do have to complain and they do call us up and we do work with a contractor to solve their problems, then they see that as a value very strongly. I hope that answers your question.
Very well, thank you. Great.
Philip, we have another question from one of our viewers. How many companies have already completed the registration process?
So I don't know in total how many companies. I know that today and for this year, we've got about 430 companies currently registered with us and undertaking monitoring.
Okay, and related to that, when can you truly say that a company is sustainable?
That is a very challenging question because the environment in which we work with changes constantly. So, but I guess sustainability is when you've managed to control the challenges. So if you're on a managed plan, let's say, to address your carbon emissions and the biodiversity damage that's done, and you've got a succession plan for your workforce, and you don't have challenges around employing people, and your communities recognize your organization as bringing social value, so a positive impact to them, I suspect that you're in a position where you're achieving a sustainable business.
Okay, so it's a true challenge. Martin, you have another question?
Yes, a question here from the people who are part of this program. So they say, and do you believe that this kind of certification should be like mandatory, and otherwise it is difficult that some companies commit with these topics? So what do you think about that?
That's again another very good question, and there are benefits of being mandatory and benefits of being voluntary. So if you volunteer for a scheme or a process, you are more likely to do that with the right motives and integrity, and probably get more from it than if it's a mandatory scheme. And I certainly in the UK and probably in most of Europe, there are sufficient regulations around building safety, personal safety, and other aspects of business to ensure that things are done correctly. What we're trying to achieve is the social value element and the sustainability for the business. And I think that's much better approach through a voluntary scheme with willing participants who want to achieve more for their employees, the public, and the clients they serve. So my preference is, or my feeling is that you get more value out of this sort of certification by being a voluntary scheme.
We'll have compiled two questions into one. Which is the most complex problem that companies face so as to allow them to get ahead in this program? And would you think that, wow, that's the same question that's already been seen, sorry. Is there one specific challenge that would be the one that has presented most problems?
Again, that's another really good question, an insightful question. I think the challenge that organizations have with the scheme is probably understanding that they can do better. I think many people register with a voluntary scheme with the intent of showing how good they are, and it's often challenging to hear that maybe you don't achieve what you thought you were achieving, but that's a learning experience for you, which is another reason I think it's good to be a voluntary scheme. I think the thing that challenged people most at the moment is undoubtedly the environmental challenges around net zero. The industry is a hugely carbon intense industry, and education within the industry, particularly at sort of an operator level, is not good currently. So there are huge challenges to meet, certainly the UK net zero targets of being net zero by 2050. The industry needs to achieve 50% reduction in its carbon by 2025, and it really hasn't started yet. So the real challenge for the industry right now or long-term challenges is around the environment, but there are significant short-term challenges today around both supply of the workforce and supply of materials, partly coming out of COVID, partly due to Brexit.
And related to that question, do you think that one of these challenges is more important than others, maybe the relation with the communities or safety or environment?
I think to be sustainable, as we said, sustainability isn't just about the environment, although people tend to think about sustainability as an environmental problem. It's not. It's how you ensure your business is fit for the future. All of these problems are equally important. Some are more urgent than others. So workforce well-being is really important right now, as is attracting skilled workers and supplies. But longer term, from a community society perspective, we have to address the environmental problems as well. So I think it's a matter of priority rather than importance as to how quickly we address some of these issues.
Chile, we're just starting with this journey, this really challenging journey. Would you give us any advice?
Yeah, I mean, the bit of advice I would give is really be open and honest with the challenge and the challenges that the industry is facing and how you're trying to help them. You don't help people by telling them that everything's okay, and equally you don't help people by telling them everything's not good or is bad. So having that sort of clear understanding of the challenges that face and how you can help people, and being open and honest about that is really important, and accepting that there are challenges to face.
Thank you for that, Philip. Martin, you have another question?
Yes, two questions, short ones. First, this certificate or be part of this program is only for the companies in the UK, or you can be part of this program in other parts of Europe, for instance?
Yeah, so currently we only provide our services within UK and Ireland. But there's no reason why this shouldn't be adopted elsewhere. You would have to maybe focus some of the elements to local challenges, but the environmental challenges and the community challenges and possibly the workforce challenges are as applicable in other jurisdictions, other countries.
To be part of the program, to the CCS program, how you want to start this commitment with the CCS, how long take for a company to accomplish this, and how long is the time you can be part of the CCS? You can be like 2 years part of this program, 3 years, and then you have to do everything again.
Yes, so again, another very good question, and it's a complex answer, I'm afraid. So the core code, when you register, you have to comply with the core code, and it depends on how long the site's registered for, but and the type of registration that organizations undertake, but there's no time limit on either a minimum registration period or a maximum registration period. So a company, if it's a company as opposed to a construction site that registers, the company would register for 1 year in the initial phase for the core code. And if it was a site, it would depend on the duration of the construction work. So it could be 1 year, 2 year, 3 years. We have some sites like HS2 that are registered for the 10 or 15 years that they're going to be constructing for. And it's just a rolling program of monitoring and improvement. If you register for one of the options, and let's say the leadership and culture module, that's a 2-year program. So you would register your company, you would undertake the survey across all of your workforce, you'd evaluate the results with our assistance, and you'd document your improvement objectives, and then you would go away and you would work on those improvement objectives over a 2-year period. And then at the end of that 2-year period, we'd come back and reevaluate how you'd improved, because that's about cultural change in the organization, and that takes time. So it's a longer registration period. Many of our companies have been registered for more than 25 years with us.
Okay, that's a long time. Philip, yeah. We have a lot of questions. Unfortunately, we have little time. So here's the last one. Is this type of certification useful to avoid any legal issues with the stakeholders and the communities during or after the construction process?
No. So in itself, registration with the scheme wouldn't avoid any legal complaints or challenges. The evidence that you produce internally within an organization and the integrity with which you work to the scheme would probably mean that you were in a better position internally to defend any legal challenge you had. But there is no protection against any legal process through the scheme.
Okay, thank you for that, Philip.
The last question.
Okay, I was just going to say, for the last question as well, if you want to email me the other questions, I'll be happy to respond to them and send them back to you.
That would be great.
Philip, the final question is, we work with a lot of subcontractors and small companies. How do you go about getting these companies to comply and to really get into the scheme as well? Because they can't even be there on a short-term basis.
Yeah. So the way we do that is we have different registration processes for organizations. So main contractors can register themselves as a company or a site, and their subcontractors would generally only be able to register as a company. And that way, as a subcontractor moves from site to site, we can go and review what that subcontractor is doing, monitor what that subcontractor is doing across the different sites that they go to. And that also provides a benefit for the subcontractor, a value, because they can use that to differentiate themselves by providing details of their scores and performance to the contracting organizations as well. We also have a supplier scheme and a client scheme. which allows different organizations to register with us, and our registration and, I guess more importantly, the monitoring and verification or assurance processes are different to match how that organization works. So it's a very flexible scheme.
Thank you so much for your presentation, for your thoughts, Philip, and for joining us today in this new edition of the e-mission. And have a really nice day.
Thank you very much. I hope it was helpful and a pleasure to meet you all.
It was. Thank you, Philip.
Bye.
Thank you, Philip. Bye.
A continuación, después de la presentación de
Up next,
Philip, vamos a
after the presentation of Philip,
invitado internacional,
we will
el
have our other international guest,
líder de valor social en Reino
leader
Unido,
of social value in the UK,
diseño, la construcción y la operación de
design,
las
construction, and operation,
de infraestructura. Estas se caracterizan por ser procesos
characterized for
sostenibles que van de la
being
mano
sustainable
con la
processes that
innovación
go
para así
along
poder
with
brindar de la
innovation
forma más eficiente mejores comunidades.
to
Welcome,
provide
Jeff. Thank you
efficient
so
and
much for
better
joining us
communities.
today.
Well,
Jeff, can you hear us? Jeff, I think you have your microphone on mute.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, now we can hear you. Thank you.
Excellent, great. Just going to share my screen, 2 seconds. Right, is that sharing at the moment?
Yes, we can see it and we can hear you all right. Thank you.
And you've got the open slide on screen being CCS partner, yeah?
Yes.
Excellent. Do you want me to begin, or are you going to do an introduction? Or
You can begin.
no problems. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeff Joseph. I'm from a company called Bouygues International, and I'm head of social value. I'm going to take you through probably a 20-minute presentation about being a CCS partner from a contractor's perspective. Just going to go full screen, 2 seconds. Right. So I'm not sure if you know us or have heard of us before. We're an international country, currently working in 92 different countries. Our fields are in construction, media, and telecommunication. We've been in the UK alone since 1997. The company was founded previously in 1952 by the Bouygues family. In terms of England alone, we've got over 1,000 employees. But so we do work internationally in over 90 different countries. And these logos here are various logos you might have seen in the Bouygues group. So I'm going to take you through what it means to be a partner organisation with CCS. It gives us a sense of belonging. It's also in full agreement to strive for excellence. It allows us to be a construction ambassador. It allows us to be an industry leader. I think most importantly, it presents the construction industry around the table so we can have discussions with like-minded professionals about the way forward, what we're doing, how we're doing it, and changes to be made. Also, being a CCS, it does make a tangible difference to the way we operate. So, what does it mean to be a CCS partner? I think, first of all, it provides a platform to either celebrate best practice or raise concerns. It's very much about having a central forum to discuss what's going on. It's a great arena for networking. So my equivalent and all the other partner organisations I know very well. We meet on a regular basis, whether it be via Teams, whether it be in person. We network and discuss the industry and what's going on. It's a venue to have a voice with your peers and your competitors. And it's also inclusive society. So being a CCS partner, you're part of this inclusive society, which does change the face of construction. The key business drivers, I think it's hearing firsthand what's going on in the industry. That's absolutely vital. To be front and centre discussions which impact the industry. To view our standing amongst our peers and competitors, again, is a key business driver. And represent at the highest level. In England, in the UK, all main contractors sign up to CCS. All main contractors are basically part of this group. As a tier 1 contractor, we have to be represented. And then lastly, to listen, to monitor, to plan and review what's happening in the industry, including trends, are absolutely vital. So what you've got here are the 2 different strap lines of CCS. So I've been in the industry for probably 28 years. When I first joined the industry and CCS came about 24 years ago, their strap line was changed in the face of construction. The strap line now, 24 years on, is raising standards and building trusts. I've seen personally, by being in construction, how this has actually changed, evolved, and how it's now got new strap line. But without a shadow of a doubt, CCS have changed construction sites, the way we're perceived, the professionals in the industry, and all the bad practice which existed 24, 25 years ago when health and safety was questionable. I've seen CCS adapt that and change that for the better. So what have CCS delivered? Well, firsthand, like I've seen changes in the last 24 years. They've raised the standards of how construction operatives work, how we're viewed, and the pride in the industry. As a result of this, we have got CCS champions, and we have champions on every site now who have to go the extra mile, think about what they're doing, and basically make sure they represent exemplary behaviour on a building site. So even though it's their strap line, I've used it again, CCS has transformed the face of construction. So what does it mean for Bouygues in the UK? What do we get out of this? We get out basically, I think it is what I said, a sense of pride. I think for us, this is absolutely key. It allows us also to push ourselves. So Bouygues' strapline is shared innovation, not just shared innovation in terms of construction and engineering, not just shared innovation in terms of what we build, but going beyond that and looking at how we can change the industry and improve what we're about. So for my site staff, it brings a sense of pride. In 2020, we won 3 awards. The Gold Award for a job called Havelock, a Silver Award for a job called Top Locks, and then a Bronze Award for a job called UCLH in central London. 3 different jobs. And like I said, we're construction, we are media, and we're engineering. These 3 jobs are very, very different. One's commercial, one's housing, one's estate regen. But for the site managers on each job, they're now competing to score very well in terms of CCS. So a job called Hounslow Quarter, which is a place called Newham in East London, that scored 46 out of 50 about 3 weeks ago. So the standard score is 45. It got 1 additional point for innovation, which made it 46. In our company, that's exceptional. So any site manager now is striving to achieve a 45 or 46 to say that they've done it. Collectively, they work with the site team, and collectively, they basically try to go beyond Call of Duty. So this job called Hounslow Quarter, we got an additional mark for biodiversity. We put a bee box on a roof, I think of a 26-story building, and we're able to monitor the bees' flight, the bees' behaviour, and how bees actually go around the borough of Newham, creating diversity. So once again, our site managers, our site staff, our operatives, they're thinking about innovation. They're thinking of how we do differently in terms of COVID, how we act differently in terms of health and safety, how we actually improve what we're about. And this is key. Trying to get top scores, I think, has been good for the industry. it's been good for the industry to have CCS as the operating umbrella, so they basically govern what we do, and with that, we follow suit. So yeah, this year, 2021, my site managers will all be striving to win the bronze, silver, or gold award, and they're also striving to get a 46 out of 50. By doing that, they bring betterment to a job. By doing that, they are basically increasing the outlook of construction and making it a better environment to work in. And surely long term, that's got to be something decent, something good. So I've picked this slide up because I think it's very relevant. If you're not consistently changing with the times, you're virtually standing still. That was a statement I heard many, many, many years ago when I worked in retail. And that stuck with me ever since. And I think this is relevant to CCS, that they are basically consistently changing with the times, therefore not standing still. And as a result of that, what they bring to the table and what we buy into as tier one contractor means that we're able to change things and move things forward. So in terms of being a CCS partner, I've got some key words here. It brings pride to the job and pride to the individual. It brings healthy competition for everyone on that site and cross sites as well. It offers empowerment, as in we can empower what we do. The sense of belonging is key, and taking ownership of our journey, taking ownership of who we are, how we interact, what we want to see, and how far we want to go. Do we want to strive for 46 out of 50, or do we just want the 39 or 40 out of 50 and be standard and not basically improve ourselves? So ownership's down to us. And then lastly, it gives a sense of achievement. I think no matter what age you are, everyone likes to get a certificate. No matter what age you are, it's always nice to get a badge. It's always nice to get a certificate. It's nice to get rewarded. So for my site teams and people in the head office, getting a sense of achievement is absolutely vital, and it brings job satisfaction. It makes you want to go to work. It makes you wear your bleed badge with pride, and it makes you basically want to be involved in the journey of construction. So last few slides. Despite Bouygues' DNA, and despite the company ethos, we are striving to do better because of CCS and the band it belongs to. Despite our unprofessionalism, we are striving a bit further. And despite our business drivers, we basically want to do better as a company. And yes, it is healthy competition with other tier one contractors. And I was thinking about this morning. And this is a statement I made for the company previously when we got a gold award. As a partner representative, which I am for Bouygues, I've witnessed that project teams have become more competitive to score best marks. And in this example, competition is healthy. Some people think competition may not be healthy. I personally think it is healthy. And I think it's basically wise for my site in, say, Cambridge versus my site in London, for them to compete and want to do well. I personally want everyone to change the face of construction. I want my site hoardings to be excellent. I want an image of what we wear to be excellent. I want the way we build the building, the way we look after the community, the way we engage with the community, the way we look after what I call community benefits, economic benefits. I want all that to be as best it can be. Hence what I've said in this example, competition is healthy. So what's it all mean? It means leaving a legacy. It means that we are exemplar. It means that internally we've set the benchmark for all our sites of 42. That benchmark is going up year on year. So going back 5 years ago, is roughly 38-40, but as a minimum now, because we're a tier 1 contractor, we want the actual benchmark to be 42. We've now been trained on the new CCS dashboards. We've now got inspectors. We've now got different criterias on how we can reach that. And like I said previously, we've got CCS champion who basically sees this over on each site. It allows the site staff to embrace innovation. I think that's quite important because that's a strap line. And then lastly, it restores pride in the job. Now, I think previously, some years ago, there wasn't much pride in the job. I think both internally and externally, it's brought back pride through every member of the site team and then back office staff in head office as well. So, in conclusion, I've put in the middle, front and centre, change of place construction still stands today. So I know CCS changed the strap line, but for me, being old school, that's how I started in the industry, and I still see that stand right now. My senior management staff and all directors have bought into what CCS is about, and they've embraced it. It's healthy for business, it's healthy for individuals at the same time. It's restored pride and sense of belonging. And then also I've put here, the branding and the badge of honour, I think is important. That badge of honour is a site manager having on their wall any certificates they've got. That branding and that badge of honour is going to awards ceremony once a year, and in front of all your peers and all your competitors, you go on that stage and you say, I've won the gold, silver or bronze award. It makes all the hard work worthwhile because construction is not an easy game to be in. So when you've been through that hassle and you've been through the challenges we face in the industry, especially after COVID, to actually get an award is lovely. And yeah, it's just transformed the way we work in general. So in conclusion, that's what it means to Bouygues as a tier 1 contractor to be part of the Considerate Constructor scheme. Any questions?
A lot of questions from our audience, and Roberto's going to make the first one.
Hello, Jeff. Good afternoon. Actually, there's quite a few questions.
Yeah.
I have one from myself. Can you hear me well?
I can hear you, yeah.
Right. On your presentation, I have the impression that this has worked immensely inside the organization. The full organization of Bouygues in UK is related to how they are achieving their results in this scheme. How would that, would you sort of understand that without this scheme, where would you have been? What would you think would have happened to the industry and for Bouygues in particular? That is obviously a worldwide organization, but in the UK.
I think the difference is with common sense, things would have changed, but not changed at the pace it did with CCS's intervention. So I think the difference is with common sense, we would have improved health and safety. With common sense, we would have improved the site hoarding, our relationship with the outside world, and on how construction sites are viewed. I think what CCS have done have accelerated that by making us think about it, by putting challenges in our face saying, look, you need to look at this seriously and take it forward. So whether it be the carbon agenda, whether it be site appearance, whether it be site security, or it just be the way we run the professionalism on the site, it would have happened always because that's evolution. I think this just made it happen and they put the agenda in front of it. So because of the agenda, what CCS operate, and as a big tier 1 contractor, we've had to buy into that and be part of that journey. Because if we weren't part of that journey, we'd be standing still and other contractors would overtake us.
For that, Jeff, we have another question. In your experience, which has been the biggest challenge during the certification process?
I think the word conforming. The biggest challenge is conforming to everything which needs to be done. So registration is easy. To register with CCS, that's straightforward. You register, you get your certificate, you're now on site. Once the site is live, it's knowing what's in CCS best practice guide. It's following that through and making sure all members of the supply chain and main contractor respect it. So we're the main contractor, we are branded Bouygues. We need to bring our supply chain along that journey to make sure that they are also representing at the highest level possible.
Very much for the presentation. In this kind of process, like you have to have all the company involved in this, starting with the president of the company. And so how has been this process in your company? You have like a department in charge of this area, a person who is leading this, and how to work that in your company?
Right, the way it works, I lead on it in terms of being a partner representative. Overall, our health and safety department are integral to this. So CCS comes under health and safety. They manage it overall. I'm the partner representative. Things cascade from me downwards to other people. Every operations director, every contracts manager, they are then aware of our deliverables. And then what we've done is we've chosen a CCS champion for each project, and that person then makes it happen on a daily basis. So they're involved in every inspection. They are involved in actually making sure we strive to go the extra mile, and they ensure that each member of the team, whether it be the main contractor or supply chain, understand the process. So there are basically 4 tiers. It's basically myself as a representative, health and safety department, look at it overall, and then you've got reps at site level who deliver it. I think most importantly, our senior management team, they also support this and buy into it.
Thank you for that, Jeff. And we have another question. We have our own certification process here, which is called Compromiso Pro. What advice would you give a company that is starting this certification process?
The advice I would give is to understand what you're getting into is the first thing, because it's not straightforward. It is challenging. It does require, in my opinion, a dedicated resource. So you need to have a resource in the organization who's going to champion this and be responsible for it. The other advice I would give is from senior management or your directors upwards, they need to understand what it's about. Senior management must back this. It can't be done at ground level. So it's not about the person running the site. It's about the hierarchy or the directors or managers understanding what is happening and then making sure it's cascaded downwards for everyone to see. There isn't a great deal of cost implication, but there is going to be some cost and some resource issues that needs to be identified by your surveyors or your estimators. So the advice overall, the conclusion is you have to be part of it because it professionalizes what you're about. Like, so common sense is good, but having an agenda in front of you which controls that common sense, I think makes the journey more worthwhile.
Jeff, we have another very interesting question here. How can you identify the inner culture or the main culture inside a company after the certification process?
That's a great question. In terms of culture, it's not obvious to see. So if you came onto my building sites, you cannot see a culture. It's not something you can touch, it's something you can feel. I think what you will see is professionalism. So in terms of everyone on site wearing a weed jacket, in terms of everyone on site having 7-point PPE, in terms of the branding, the way the building site looks, the way the hoarding looks, the way we carry ourselves on site, I think you're not going to see a culture, but you can see a professional level of being, and that's what it brings to the table. If you came onto our sites, you think, yeah, this is run very well. That's because we are Bouygues, we're an international company, and we've got standards to keep. I would say that the culture or the background atmosphere is one striving to do the best we can. And our strapline of shared innovation, I think, goes hand in hand with what CCS will try and bring to the table in what I said earlier, change in the face of construction. That strapline for me says it all. And I said, I've been in this industry 28 years. I've seen those changes firsthand.
Jeff, Roberto has another question for you.
There's a lot of questions here. It's hard to find the one that represents most interest and also takes into consideration the time we have. But one of the questions is how such a large organization can maintain the objectives and are everybody pushing in the same line?
So in the UK, we've got 21 live sites. That's not a lot. So we can all push in the same direction because we've got a standard uniform to achieve. So through the health and safety team and through my team, if we say the directive for 2022 is going to be an improvement in the way we interact, if we say in 2022, we're going to look at well-being, mental illness. If we say in 2022, we're going to look at our supply chain and how a supply chain deliver, then over 21 sites, it makes it feasible. So as I said before, I have got something called a project champion on each site. Through me, through the health and safety team, that's cascaded downwards. And that project champion will know the mantra for what we're trying to achieve next year, and they'll follow that mantra accordingly. And like I said, I'm very lucky that my senior management team have supported this, and my senior management team bought into this. Once you have that, it makes everything else easier.
Jeff, we have another question from one of our viewers, which has had the experience of starting a certification process, and he tells us here, this is not a race, but a marathon. How do you keep the teams motivated?
I think with us, we've been established for a long time. You keep the teams motivated. It's almost self-motivation. I think for me, the competition of wanting to win a bronze, silver, a gold award, or competition of wanting to score a 42 on 38, that's a self-motivation, isn't it? So where I've got a site with a turnover of, say, 100 million, a job in London, on site for 2.5 years, which is 100 million, where I've got a smaller site worth 45 million, both sites are competing. Both sites want to achieve what they want to achieve. So yes, it is a marathon, it's not a sprint, but the marathon means at the end of that 2-year project, you come out of that wanting scores to increase. So yes, we accept the first visit, you may score 35. Second visit, you'll score 38. By the third visit, you hit your benchmark of 42. So it is those stepping stones to go from 38 to 42. That's why a person who knows about this is saying it's a marathon, not a sprint, because you do not get 42 on your very first visit. You may do if you're exceptional, but that's quite rare. You may get your first one 38 and you're disappointed. Second one's 40, slightly happier. Next one's 42, and you think, right, I'm now where I should be. I'm now achieving, and I've restored that pride in everyone on site, and everyone's been on that journey with you. And because that journey, you think, spot on, I am where I want to be.
Jeff. And we have another very interesting question here. How do you present the idea of the certification to the board, and when it is a untangible asset investment?
Yeah, I think the answer is that because we are a tier 1 contractor and not tier 2, we have to be part of this because all our competitors are. So presenting to the board, despite it being intangible, they have to see the value of it because it's where we are as a company. And I think this is absolutely key now. Apart from us as a contractor wanting it, is a client driver. So when you actually tender for work, or when you actually are going for work with local authority, what we call a housing provider, a registered provider, or a landlord, our landlords will say to us, are you CCS compliant? Our landlords will say to us, what is your track record on health and safety? Our landlord, the client, will say to us, can you evidence your scores in the last 3 years? So it's always become a prerequisite to get onto a tender list, which wins a job of 100 million. So therefore, senior management have to say, yes, we need to be doing this and be part of that journey.
Those advices and thoughts, Jeff. And we have another question. Did you see any real change in your company after the certification process?
Yeah. What I've seen is people wanting to compete with someone they know on another job. I think that's the main thing we've seen. We have seen a site manager who says he wants to do better than he's doing previously. I've seen my site managers, like I say, go to the award ceremony and basically win an award. I've seen my site managers and surveyors and estimators and a document controller and site administrators wanting to better themselves. So once they're registered on site, on the site notice board, there's a very large notice board which says CCS. On that board, it says you are a CCS compliant contractor and that you're basically branded CCS. Once it's on your site hoarding and it's on the front of your site gate, you start that journey. And because that journey has started, people want to do the best they can along the way.
That is really encouraging. Roberto has another question for you.
There's a short question here. How do you involve the workers? Is there some sort of incentive for them to comply with what is in the scheme?
Every site's different. So in terms of our supply chain and the workers, I have got some sites who do employee of the month. So there's a vote, and someone's outstanding in their job role, they may win employee of the month and get a £100 Amazon voucher. Another way of doing it is the best performing supply chain partner, not in terms of their work, but in terms of keeping their workstations clean, they may get an award. So yes, there is a bit of reward for some site managers, but not for all. We bring supply chain on board via toolbox talks, via industry regulations, via the weekly site meetings. The site team will say to the supply chain and the workers, this is what we're about, this is what we're doing, be part of it. And this is slightly wrong, but once again, being a tier 1 contractor, we cannot have what I would say is a sloppy supply chain. We can't have a partner who's not on board. So to make our criteria and to even work for Bouygues in the first intention, they must be at a certain standard to even start the day.
Thank you, Jeff. We have a last question. What is the next step after you enter this certification process? And your answer is really interesting because that means that the certification isn't just the main goal during this whole process.
So stages one is to say yes and enter the certification and get your branding on site hoarding and get your certificate. Stage 2 is understand all the objectives of what you're buying into as being this on the certificate. Once you're actually registered and you have got that on site, it's then agreeing to the agenda of CCS and agreeing to all their objectives. Then from there, the site manager, project director needs to instill what's on that profile, deliver it, and consistently deliver it. So it's not just a one-off. You don't just register today, put the notice board up and walk away. Continuously, month after month after month, from inception of the site to handover, you are continuously improving what you're doing. So yeah, it's not just a one-off. It is, if your site's, if you're on site for 36 months, for the full 36 months, you'll be looking at the agenda. It's reminded of your objectives. It forms part of the company business plan, and you need to keep achieving as time moves on.
Jeff, for your time, for your presentation, for your thoughts on the subject. It has been really helpful for all of us here to have your experience during this e-misión. Have a really nice day.
Great, thank you so much.
Queremos decirles, esta presentación podría haber terminado, pero no ha
This
terminado
presentation
todavía.
could have finished, but it's still not finished.
Se nos han planteado grandes desafíos
We have
para.
enormous challenges.
Queremos pedir también que ustedes
We'd like to request you to participate
empezando ya a
in our
acercarnos.
activity because we're starting to get close
Por favor, ingresen
to the end.
nuevamente
But please
los enunciados que se están viendo en este
log
minuto.
on to Mentui again, and you
En
can
términos
see
generales, ¿cómo
what's on screen.
evaluarían la sesión?
we have a
Esto
question.
es,
In general terms, how would you assess the session?
con este
Cases
feedback, esta
applied,
retroalimentación,
cases
nosotros
of
podemos ir
certification.
mejorando
We have
también
this
nuestros
feedback, and we
próximos
can so we can
encuentros.
improve our next
Además,
encounters.
les pedimos que
But
por favor
in
nos
addition, we'd like
comenten
to request you to please
que llevan en
comment
este día.
on the learnings we have.
Que les haya quedado, vamos a estar revisando, les van a estar subiendo. Yo voy a aprovechar también estas dos
We'll be
acompañantes que
uploading
tengo hoy
everything,
día
all the
para
feedback,
preguntarles
and
a
I'll take
ustedes,
advantage
¿qué
of
dirías tú, Martín, desde tu
the
experiencia?
participants here today. Martin,
¿Cuál es lo que
what's your
más
learning from your
destaca
experience?
de esta
What
sesión de hoy
would
día
you
y de
like to
nuestros
highlight from this
expositores?
session today and our
La verdad que fueron las
lectures?
dos presentaciones muy buenas, hay harto aprendizaje
Both
de ambas.
presentations were actually great. I liked
Yo como
both.
empresa, yo trabajo en constructora inmobiliaria de LP,
We as a company, I work
creación del sello.
in
De
a real estate
hecho,
company,
participamos en el plan piloto.
construction company.
Y
We
ahora
actually
como
participated in the
empresa
pilot plan,
decidimos
and we as a company
embarcarnos en
decided
certificarnos a
to
nivel empresa.
certify
Un
us
gran
as a
desafío.
company level. It's a
Un
great
poco al escuchar esta
challenge.
presentación uno
But after
se
hearing this
motiva.
presentation,
O sea, la
you
presentación de
actually get a
Jeff,
lot of motivation. I like
excelente trabajo
Jeff's
que han hecho ellos,
presentation,
increíble,
all
o
the
sea,
work they've done.
no lejos llegar a ese nivel, pero yo creo que ese es el punto donde queremos llegar.
That's the point we want to
Se
reach.
sientan orgullosos de ser parte de la empresa, de querer tener este sello.
I hope if they can feel proud of being part of the company, of having this seal.
Entonces yo creo que es un muy buen compromiso y yo creo que hay que
I
invitar
think
a las
that's a
otras
great
empresas también
commitment,
a que se unan. Porque
and we
para
need
allá
to
la
invite
cosa
other
y
companies to be part of
hacerlo
this.
ya.
Claro, hace más
And we
sentido
need to
también
do
cuando uno
this
ve la experiencia que están
already.
teniendo a nivel
Apply it
internacional,
now.
¿no?
Yes, it makes sense when you see the international they're having an international level, right? From the Sustainability Council, what's a learning or the idea, the core idea you take from all this? There's many aspects. Right? It's very important, but there's other aspects that we probably all need to incorporate into this commitment. And at the end, everyone will start demanding being part of the pro commitment and also having the certification when needed, just to fill up with the expectations. So it's not courses from inside, it's not leadership from inside of the company anymore, but it's going to be a need to survive this championship of earning, tendering for awards, to be sustainable with time. So I think we've had great explanations, not only the principal asking anymore. So let's enter early to be champions of commitment. This will be great for our company. It's the same experience as Jeff has had, right? That shows us we've had many things that are intangible sometimes. Even the question of how does this present, how it happens in the board, it helps a lot. So there's also learning from all of you. We will be doing this in the last session today. But because of time, we will start to say goodbye now. Thank you very much for tuning in. We hope this activity was quite fruitful for all of you, and it's great learnings for all of you. And I'd like to remind you that on Friday the 15th, we'll be here together again this morning to talk about sustainability and the importance of applying this. So we'll see you then, and have a great day.